Since the release of Prey a few weeks ago, I've gone a bit Predator mad. I've rewatched the old movies, not that one, and both AVP films. I've been listening to the audiobook If It Bleeds, and I've been having a look at a few of the comics trying to decide which one to start reading. A couple of my friends are huge Predator nerds too, and both recommended Predator Concrete Jungle. Phrases like, really good, and loads of fun were thrown around, so I figured, why not, I'll give it a go. As it turns out, my friends are fucking idiots, and can't be trusted. Predator Concrete Jungle is not a good game. It controls like shit, it looks bland, and is boring to play. And it breaks my heart, because there's a genuinely good game in there, trying its best to get out. Spoiler warning, because I'm going all in on this one. Predator Concrete Jungle was developed by Eurocom, a studio best known for arcade ports and pumping out average licensed games with reckless abandon. In fact, Concrete Jungle was the second of 3 titles released by the studio in 2005, the other 2 being games from the movies Robots and Batman Begins. All reviewed average at best, which isn't surprising because 3 games in a year doesn't give me the impression they were made with time, care or attention. And that's my problem with this game. There are so many great ideas that are held back by piss poor execution that I genuinely believe would have been so much better had the developers spent more time on it. So let's take a look. I wanted to start the story with at least some basic idea of how to play, so I jumped straight into the training mode. And I was there for half an hour. And I've got to be honest, they're pretty comprehensive and actually do a great job showing the ropes. They also sell a game that isn't there, which I'll talk about later, and highlight a lot of the game's issues, such as movement, combat and gadgets. I'll explain how everything works as the video goes on, but I wanted to highlight an issue I took with one aspect of the training in particular. The Predator practices combat by slaughtering homeless people, and I don't like that. The Yautja have a stringent honour code, with points like hunting worthy game, never harming the innocent, etc, etc, and breaking the honour code will see the hunter exiled from their tribe. Now, it might just be me, but jumping into a homeless camp and slaughtering the population where they stand doesn't seem very honourable. According to Predator lore apparently, there are cases where breaking the honour code is allowed if it means regaining lost honour, but from what I can tell, the only case of that happening is this game. And to tell you the truth, I'm not even sure this story is canon anymore anyway, because Fox could never seem to decide what they were doing with the IP. Anyway, starting the campaign now, and things begin with a bang as we see a predator jump through a church window, covered in its own green blood, a gaping wound where its left eye used to be. The objective is simple: get back to his ship. And as an opening level, it's not too bad. We're introduced to melee combat, which is essentially just mashing 2 buttons, strong attack and weak attack, in no particular order or rhythm. I can lock into an enemy for more focused attacks, or just flail into a crowd like a madman hoping for the best. Attacks feel floaty and imprecise, and there's no feedback for strikes. No subtle vibration of the controller, no crunch on impact, no brief pause before a hit connects. It feels like I'm slapping ghosts with my eyes closed. The level goes on and it's very linear, essentially a straight line to the end with intermittent combat along the way. A juggle mechanic is introduced for tossing enemies into the air, and to be completely honest, I forgot about this almost immediately. I'm given a bonus mission to kill the Irish boss, and as you can see from what he and his men are wearing, racial sensitivity isn't really going to be a thing in this game. Killing him triggers an execution animation, which I have to admit is as cool as it is gross. And I receive a new costume as an award. Back into the action, and my guy has to run and jump across the rooftops to get back to his ship, and another glaring issue is highlighted. The angle of the camera and trajectory when jumping is awful. Whenever I jump, the camera gets pulled under the predator, destroying depth perception and making aiming and landing precise jumps next to impossible. The angle he jumps at is less of a leap and more of a hop, and the game's physics feel like they're actively pushing against me, giving me the feeling of jumping through mud. For a game where I'd think running and jumping across building tops with the finesse of a 7-foot gymnast would be one of the main gameplay elements, the Predator moves with all the grace of my equally tall ex-housemate coming home drunk from a drag show at 3 AM on a Wednesday. The building he lands on explodes, and he falls to the ground, triggering the only pre-rendered cutscene in the whole game as the Predator blows up his ship, destroying a big area of New Way City. He's nowhere near Ground Zero and is very much alive when his tribe come to collect him. He failed his hunt, lost his equipment, exposed himself to the enemy, and set off his contingency without killing himself. Remember that code of honour? It clearly states if a hunter fails a hunt, they should end their own life, like this guy did in the jungle in 1987. So the impression I'm getting is this Predator is an idiot who isn't very good at his job. He's then exiled by his tribe and left on a hostile alien planet, and 100 years later his tribe returns with an offer to reclaim his honour. In the years since his exile, the gear he left behind has been reverse engineered by the Borgia family, who were the previous targets. They've rebuilt New Way City, now called Neonopolis, the City of Light, into a technologically advanced city years ahead of anywhere else on Earth. This tech is now being used against the Yautja whenever they come back to Earth, and criminals run rampant in the streets with tech they shouldn't have. It's now up to this exiled Predator to hunt them all down, recover his missing equipment, and undo the mistake from a century before. So, apparently this is a somewhat controversial opinion, especially with mainstream reviewers at the time, but I really like Concrete Jungle's story. There are loads of nods and references to the movies that admittedly don't make any canonical sense, but they're fun to point at and say, I understand that reference. It's schlocky and comic booky, which makes sense because Grant Morrison wrote it. Admittedly, it's not their best work, but the fact Eurocom managed to get one of the most prolific comic book writers of all time to pen their story is really impressive. It's just a shame Morrison couldn't put their name to a better game. Mission 2 starts questionably, as the Predator is hunting black dudes described as having a savage devotion to gods of slaughter and magic. So if you had voodoo hooligans on your racist bingo card, make sure to mark that down. The objective of this mission is to hunt down and flay 3 killers wearing suits derived from Predator cloaking tech, and it's this mission where I realised I was playing a rushed, broken and unfinished game. So it's probably apparent from the footage that I had no idea what I was doing for a while, and spent a lot of time fighting with the camera and clunky controls. The camera is one of the worst I've ever experienced in a game. Every time I turn, it'd snap behind the Predator trying to keep him perfectly centered. This would make Traversal feel stiff and disorientating, and combat would become unfocused and chaotic as the camera whipped about the place. Even running in a straight line was difficult, as the slightest turn would have the camera snap behind him, causing him to run off his line and overcorrect, giving him the appearance of a gymnast trying not to fall off a beam. The city streets are narrow and claustrophobic, making the camera zoom in way too close a lot of the time. It feels like it's constantly working against me, and it caused me to fail more missions than I care to admit. And the bad camera on top of the clunky movement makes for a miserable experience. The Predator has a couple of movement speeds depending on how hard you push the analog stick, but it is so sensitive, it goes from a casual stroll to a full-on sprint if a breeze hits it, making him feel less precise to control than the characters in Sonic Adventure. This sucks when trying to sneak up on people, or trying to maneuver around tight ledges, but the most annoying aspect of Traversal without a doubt is the Predator's inability to climb buildings. Holding down on the jump button charges it, and releasing it makes him jump higher, but most of the buildings are too high to reach the top of. He can grab a hold of ledges, but 9 times out of 10 he doesn't want to, and he can only climb up fire escapes or surfaces that look like they're covered in mesh and highlighted blue with one particular vision type. However, in the name of fairness, I will give credit to where credit's due, and happily admit that once I did get to the top of a building and was able to run around the rooftops for a while, it was a lot of fun. It served absolutely no tactical advantage to the missions, and unfortunately the level size is so small and restrictive, it doesn't take very long to see everything the tiny levels have to offer. Also, in a game called Concrete Jungle, there are only like 2 actual outdoor city maps, and these are actually repeated a couple of times. The rest of the game takes place in warehouses, laboratories and other really quite linear levels, which is hugely disappointing. I came into this fully expecting to be leaping across rooftops, stalking prey from afar and waiting for the perfect time to strike, but in reality I spent most of my time running through the streets with my optical camouflage on, being spotted by every citizen of Neonopolis anyway because I was either moving too fast or too close to them. I'm playing as a Predator, a Yautja, the most fearsome hunters in the galaxy. He should be able to scale buildings with ease, not jumping against walls trying to find a climbable surface. It's not like there wasn't a precedent for building Traversal at the time. Treyarch had already released 3 Spider-Man games that Eurocom could have borrowed a wall climb from. They already took the jump charge and climb animation, including its weird camera angle, from Spider-Man 2. And as I was capturing Spider-Man footage for this part, I realised they're using the exact same dotted line combination to show how elevated on the map something is. Anyway, I eventually figure out how to lock onto and flay cloaked bandits. I have to put away my arm blades, switch to a different vision mode, slap them till I can grab them, and take them to a highlighted spot in the level to trigger an animation. And here's where we run into another misstep. Being a Predator, we're equipped with a cloaking device for limited invisibility in 3 vision modes, thermal tech and neuro. Thermal vision allows the predator to see body heat, and according to the in-game hint, also allows it to see through thin cover. But whenever I used it, I could only see the people immediately in front of me. I found thermal vision to be mostly useless, and I'm pretty sure it's only in the game because it's in the movies. It can be used to scan for enemy strengths and weaknesses, but after the first couple of missions I realised this wasn't necessary. Neurovision shows an NPC's mental state and lets the predator identify honourable prey. Scanning an enemy will highlight more enemies of that type in the area, but during the one mission I actually had to use it, it ended up highlighting everyone I scanned anyway, so it wasn't useful at all. Honourable prey will just attack if I get too close, so again, outside of maybe one mission, this is also a useless vision mode. Tech vision is by far the most useful. It highlights recharge points, which are used to keep my energy charged up so I can use my cloaking device, plasma caster and smart disk. It highlights cloaked items and enemies and climbable surfaces, and out of the three, this is the one I used the most, because to stay cloaked I had to constantly hunt for recharge stations, and the predator won't lock onto cloaked enemies without it, despite being able to see them in thermal vision mode. Different vision types are a great idea for a predator game, but they aren't implemented as well as they could have been. Concrete Jungle came out a month after Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, the third game in the Splinter Cell series, which all had similar systems in place. But whereas the different vision types in Splinter Cell were tightly woven into the gameplay systems, in Concrete Jungle they felt like a bit of an afterthought, or like the devs just didn't know how to implement them properly. Needing to constantly find recharge points meant I mostly saw the world in green and blue. And because these stations are mostly on the roofs of buildings, I was constantly fighting with a shitty camera and terrible climbing system. It makes for a genuinely frustrating gameplay loop, the novelty of which runs out real quick. The way the training level introduced the different vision types gave me the impression of a much slower paced game, one where I'd be stalking enemies while cloaked, watching them in first person mode, using different visors to determine if they were my target, or just worthy prey. I was hoping for something akin to Hitman 2, but the closest game I can think of to compare it to is X2 Wolverine's Revenge. So I finished scanning my guys, and then the riot police arrive, and now I have to kill them too, for some reason. This part sucks because we get some new enemies called Ulysses, walking bipedal tanks that take an absolute age to kill. Scanning them tells me I can defeat it by accessing and removing the organic component, but it doesn't tell me how to do that, and so I am soon ganged up on and die in an embarrassing display of incompetence. And here the game highlights another mechanic that just fucking sucks. Failing the mission set me back to the start of the chapter. There is no checkpoint. I die, I start the missions again. Every time. There are 26 chapters that each take around 5 to 10 minutes to finish, if I know what I'm doing. But replaying the same 5 to 10 minutes over and over and over again because I failed for the dumbest reason feels like some kind of torture. It's like Groundhog Day if Groundhog Day was a shit game that hated me. Every mission fail felt incredibly cheap, and when combined with the lack of a checkpoint system, like it was being used as a way to artificially lengthen the game, and every time I had to restart a level from the beginning, I'd feel another piece of me die. After several deaths and restarts, I figured out how to kill the Ulysses. All I had to do was get behind one, wait for a target to appear, and then jump. That's it. Instant kill. So finishing a mission kicks me back to the main menu, and the first time this happened I thought the game had bugged out on me. If this was a portable game, I'd get it. I'd even like it, maybe. But on console I found it jarring. It's just a weird design choice and breaks up the flow of the story, and I never got used to it. Next mission then, and it's boss time. At first I tried to be sneaky, like a predator, and everyone can see me anyway, so I decided fuck it and just tear through the henchmen with reckless abandon. The Predator has other weapons at his disposal, like his plasma caster that uses 25 energy points to fire and does fuck all damage this early in the game. A spear gun, which is a lot of fun to use when locked onto enemies, otherwise it just kind of fires off into space. It requires ammo to use though and runs out quickly, which is a shame but understandable, or else it'd run the risk of turning Concrete Jungle into a fun game. There's the smart disc that takes 10 energy points to use and can hit multiple enemies at once. But again, until upgraded, this thing just tickles enemies a little bit. And there's a plethora of mines that I rarely use because they didn't seem to do much damage. To be honest, outside of melee combat, I only really used the spear gun, because it was the only weapon that seemed to do any worthwhile damage. These limited use weapons should have been much, much more powerful than they were. If I have to deplete limited resources to use these weapons, I want them to be worth my while. I want the plasma caster to blow holes through my enemies and the smart disc to slice crowds in two. This arsenal is meant to make me feel like an unstoppable killing machine, but instead it's as effective as telling a bully to stop hitting me or else I'll tell the headmaster. I never felt strong like a predator playing Concrete Jungle, I just felt like a regular guy getting beat up by racist stereotypes. Speaking of which, the boss has arrived, and what the fuck is this music? It sounds like an off-brand version of Weapon of Choice by Fatboy Slim. So, as you can see, boss fights aren't very good. There's no skill involved at all, it's just circle strafe / stun repeat. And this is true for every single boss in the game, even the last one. And I'm not even mad at this point, I'm just disappointed. After beating the boss, my guy beheads him to claim his trophy, which I will admit is very cool, and it's back to the menu for a costume change. Now I have to give credit where credit's due. I think the Predator model itself looks fantastic. There's loads of detail on it, and the unlockable costumes that are based on designs from the movies are excellent. And the ones based on original designs made specifically for the game mostly look great. I say mostly because the final costume to unlock, Bad Blood, looks like absolute shit. So, in Predator lore, Bad Blood is a term used to describe Yautja who have gone against their own kind and violated the Code of Honor. One of, if not the most famous, being the Bad Blood Predator itself, from the comic, surprisingly titled Predator Bad Blood. The devs had two awesome looking designs they could have gone with here, being the Bad Blood itself or the Enforcer sent after it. But instead what we got was this. And I know it's based on a Predator from later in the game, but it just looks shit. The next mission has me locating 3 beacons to find a ship belonging to some predators who were on Earth before me and who were likely killed. Could it be these guys from the intro movie? Probably, but more on that later. I find the bonus objective for this chapter and have no idea where to go. You see, bonus objectives are a bit of a mess. Not all of the levels have them, and only some of the levels that do have them actually let the player know what they are. Some of them can be completed by accident, and some of them are so obtuse and hidden that I ended up using a guide to find them. And this is a problem because bonus missions are pretty much essential. Aside from unlocking new costumes, completing bonus missions will increase the Predator's attributes, namely health, energy and armour. Add to these the fact that every weapon in the Predator's arsenal has upgrades to find. There are a lot of necessary upgrades that can be easily missed. After finding the beacons, there's a police alert about an ambulance being raided for drugs, but it isn't in a police zone, so the police shouldn't go. Which begs the question, why make the call in the first place? So the Predator then has to kill 4 women with possible drug addictions to stop them stealing the drugs, but doesn't actually return the drugs. After successfully stopping the thieves with murder, the Predator is then tasked with stopping an arms deal, which is game speak for do some murders. And it's back to the starting area to watch a mugging happen, then kill the muggers after they've done a mugging. I genuinely have no idea why this mission has the Predator partaking in vigilante street justice. I can only surmise it has something to do with this comic. Next, we have to enter the church, and I actually like this part. I have to cloak up and stay out of sight, then switch to first person mode and lock onto a target and listen to him as he says the password to get into the church. Then switch to vocal mimicry and use his voice on the intercom to get into the church. It's such a great moment that admittedly would have been better if it wasn't for the infinitely spawning street thugs shooting me while I tried to finish the mission. But this kind of thing is exactly what I wanted out of a Predator game. Next mission is a boss battle. This time there's 3 strong enemies who run around a predetermined path. Once again, this boss is little more than hit an enemy until it falls over and hit it some more. I can't stress enough how utterly mindless and boring this is, and it sucks the fun out of what should be fun encounters. The next mission has a proper Hitman feel to it and such potential to be something special, but thanks to the controls and camera, it's not. Also, Italian mobsters, obviously mafia, mark it on your card. The objective here is to turn off the power to these sentry guns, so it's sneaky across the bridges avoiding the mines and guards. Grab the dude with the controls and run off the cliff. And now the guards see me, so restart, sneaky, back to the guard, and oh for fuck's sakes. wait for the next guy, don't fall off the cliff, turn the power off and get seen by the guards, fight, restart again until eventually I get the guns turned off and a woman and a robot arrives. So it's back to killing everything on sight until the mission ends. And I think this mission perfectly encapsulates Predator Concrete Jungle as a whole. Great ideas, marred by terrible controls and poor execution. And it only gets worse from here. Time for another boss, and fuck me. I collect a new weapon and take out a ton of henchmen while having health and energy chipped away until the boss arrives. He's dispatched easily enough, but the mission doesn't end when I rip his head off. Apparently, in this one I have to kill everything in the arena, including the woman in the robot. Easy, right? It's basically a Ulysses. Just jump on it and... Nope. How about jump on it and punch it until I'm thrown off and hit for massive damage? It turns out I have to jump on it, hit it, jump off, run away, rinse repeat for a long time until it dies. But, like an idiot, I didn't complete the bonus task and collect the upgrade. So I think, that's okay, I know what I'm doing, let's just retry the level. So I did, and the entire fight bugged out on me. First of all, the woman in the robot just disappeared into thin air. Like, I picked up the glaive and she just disappeared off the map. I have no idea why or how. I don't think the Mafia men killed her because I didn't hear her die, she just disappeared. Then, the boss itself wouldn't take any physical damage from me, and I ran out of energy so I couldn't shoot him with the plasma caster. So I was just trapped here, and I had to restart again. Third time's a charm, I guess. Next mission is one of the most annoying in the game. First of all, if you have Mexican gang dressed as luchadors on your racist bingo card, mark it down. Also, I just want to point out that the gang dressed like luchadors are called the Matadors. They are two very different things, and this bothered me for the rest of the game. Anyway, the objective here is to get to destinations on the map before the target, El Hongo, does. And this has to be done without being seen by police cameras. This is made all the more difficult by the unruly camera and inability to climb, and I know I sound like a broken record, but I really need you to understand how fucking awkward this game is to play. There's a reference to King Willie, who we learn didn't die with his boys, which isn't wrong because anyone who's seen Predator 2 knows King Willie died in 1997 during a hot LA summer. This level stressed me out. It feels like it wants me to play with stealth and the level's verticality in a game where neither of those elements work. Instead, I just have to run from checkpoint to checkpoint as quick as I can and hope I don't miss any jumps lest the timer run out. Eventually the objective changes, the cameras turn off, and I'm free to run around this section of the city killing El Hongo's gun merchants who are all dressed up like hot dog vendors for reasons unknown to anyone but themselves. Next mission introduces us to one of the main villains of the story, Lucretia, and my guy has to follow El Hongo in his car. By elegantly leaping from rooftop to rooftop like a vengeful ballerina? Nope. By putting on his stealth cloak and running after the car. Next he has to kill some pimps, and if you had pimps dressed like this on your bingo card, that's another point for you. There's also a bonus mission to kill prostitutes to unlock something, and I've got to be honest, this made me feel gross. Back to the code of honour, and why the fuck would a predator be killing prostitutes, especially unprovoked? I don't like this at all. It shows such little understanding for how the Yautja conduct themselves, and the glorification of killing sex workers and racial stereotypes isn't something I'm comfortable with. And I don't care that 2005 was a different time, it's still gross. So let's kill some Russian cyborgs! This is another boss fight with multiple enemies and the objective of stabbing them until they're dead. It's another mindless, awkward melee and more irritating than it is fun, but at least it's over quickly. The hunt for El Hongo continues to the old docks while he's under the protection of a gang called the Working Girls, who are made up of... let me check my notes. Ex-porn star hookers. This fucking game, I swear. I struggled with this mission for longer than I cared to admit. There's a jamming field that disrupts cloaking tech, so I have to avoid being seen by cameras and guards. Being seen too much is a mission fail, and it's annoying as shit. First task is to find El Hongo and lock onto him to trigger a cutscene, which is easy enough. Then I have to find a supply of pulse mines, but unlike any other objective or person of interest, they're not marked on the minimap. So it becomes a game of trial and error, trying to locate the mines, running around with no idea where I'm going while trying to avoid cameras and guards. And now I'm typing it out, I have a suspicion the devs were going for a Metal Gear Solid kind of level. The problem is, Metal Gear Solid had competent stealth mechanics, and this doesn't. Eventually, I found the area with the mines, and I will admit I had fun here. Taking the guards out from a distance with my spear gun, climbing around the shipping containers, staying out of sight, it was a great slice of how the game could have been. Before collecting the mines, I retrieved the maul, a weapon which is great until it isn't, thanks to its annoying and overly long spin animation, and collecting the mines triggers the next objective. Now the Predator has to go back to where he spied on El Hongo and wait for a guard to say the password at a locked door so he can mimic it, all without being seen. Which I of course fail, despite hearing her say the thing, but it turns out I wasn't locked on, so it didn't count. I've lost count of how many times I've failed this chapter so far, but I know it's a lot because I can practically speedrun the fucking thing, including bonus mission. I get back to the password bit, lock on and record, equip vocal mimicry, and mission failed. It turns out I have to be locked onto the intercom just to use vocal mimicry. So it's back to running the level again, and oh my god, I am so tired. I finally get inside the room and blow the generator, shutting off the cameras and jamming tech so I can use my camouflage again. Now I have to get onto a ship, blow up the contents, and escape, which I failed to do because of the fucking camera and jump mechanics, and now I have to do the whole fucking thing again. I hate this game so much. So after trying for what feels like the 100th time, I blow the ship up and escape, revealing all the
ex-porn star hookers
to be actually wearing full body armor called a chameleon suit. And now it's finally time to flay El Hongo, and it's not even a boss fight. And after that, the Predator fucking kills the leader of the working girls in a cutscene. This should have been a good level thanks to the challenge of not being cloaked, but the layout of the level, the dodgy camera, wonky jumping and the non-existent checkpoint system make it an absolute fucking chore. The next mission starts with the Predator being spotted by a camera that he apparently can't see despite it being right in his face, and we meet the actual big bad for the game. The mission itself is fairly easy, just avoid the cameras and blow 4 power boxes to open the door to an underground bunker. I can actually shut the cameras off, but I didn't realise this until I replayed the level later on while collecting missed bonuses. Once in the bunker, I have to beat up 4 energy tanks until they explode, then beat up a main power core in the middle of the room until that explodes, and escape on a lift. Honestly, after the last mission, something so quick and basic was a relief. Boss time next, and it's another gank first. There are 4 superpowered soldiers to find and kill. I failed this a few times as they hit like tanks from range and have a tendency to gang up on me. Thankfully, their armour is made of used Kleenex, and once I start hitting them, that's basically it. And they go out in the lamest way, stun locked into oblivion until their heads are ripped from their shoulders. Beating these guys doesn't matter anyway, as the Predator is battered and captured as soon as the fight ends, and I'm treated to some exposition and Easter eggs. Both Wayland and Yutani corporations get mentioned, as well as Charles Wayland, who was friends with the big guy until he disappeared, a reference to the first Alien vs Predator film. The next couple of missions flash back to 1930, the night everything went wrong for the Predator, and I get to actually experience what happened before he jumped through the window at the start of the game. Once again, the camera makes moving awkward, but it's one of the more direct and, dare I say, fun chapters in the game. At least that's what I would say if I didn't die a million times. But I hold up my hands and say that is 100% partly my fault. The bonus mission here is to take out the snipers in the windows, and trying to aim in first person mode is fucking shit. At the slightest nudge, the reticle moves too far, making the whole experience of aiming in first person extremely imprecise and ineffective. I eventually did it by getting close to the window, locking on, and using either my smart disc or spear gun. The whole ordeal was worth it though, as I unlocked the Alien Hunter costume, which is based on Scar from the first AVP movie, which came out the year before the game. And I just realised that's probably why they referenced Charles Wayland by name. From here, I just ran to the end of the level because I couldn't be bothered to fight. But look at this armour, it's so good. Next, my guy's in a museum hunting Bruno Borgia, and it's here, at around the halfway point, I realise I can change the camera from auto to manual, and I have to confess I felt like a complete idiot not realising I could do this earlier. The game improved no end with the camera being unlocked, so much so that I went back and replayed the earlier missions with the manual camera just to give them a fair go. And yeah, game-changing improvement. And I honestly don't understand why this isn't the default camera. It doesn't fix everything, movement is still clunky and combat is still boring, but if the camera had been like this since the beginning, I'd have been a lot less harsh in my opinion and probably enjoyed myself a lot more. But yeah, this mission's fine. It's just an enemy gauntlet that's manageable now the camera isn't terrible. Boss time next, and this one's annoying. Bruno has a shield to block forward striking attacks, and he's surrounded by infinitely respawning mobs, some of which throw Molotov cocktails from a distance. So once again, the fight becomes an exercise in circle strafing and backslashes. I really wish the boss fights were better. Back to the present now, and the Predator gets a name, Scarface, which was given to him by the woman who injured him, who also happens to be the story's narrator, but more on that later. Now it's time to retrieve Scarface's lost equipment and escape the lab. This can be a pain in the arse because he starts off with only 10 hit points, so if a breeze hits him, mission failed. Luckily the guards here are weak and can be easily slapped to death. Once his mask is retrieved, I have to scan everyone until I find the lead scientist so Scarface can use his face to open a door. It took a while, but I found him and got spanked to death for my trouble. On my next attempt I sprinted back, grabbed the wrong guy, killing him, and completed the bonus objective without trying, so that was nice. I managed to grab the right scientist and open the door and take out a few guards on my way to the upper levels. The Predator's jump arc was actually perfect for leaping from walkway to walkway, so I managed to get to the top without failing, which genuinely surprised me. I recharge my energy and finally have access to my plasma caster and camouflage again. Not that I need that here. And after this, it's a quick run to the end of the chapter. I'll be honest, I didn't hate this one. It was nice to actually use Scarface's Neurovision scan for a change, and completing the bonus objective by accident did make me smile. The next mission, however, is absolute garbage, and I almost stopped playing because of it. I had to fight groups of guards who take far too long to take out, and while I'm focusing on one enemy, the others in the group are using energy rifles to chip away at my health. The plaster cast is effective, but I only have enough energy for 12 shots in total, including recharge stations, so it's barely any help at all. At one point I'm told to free my brethren, so I spent far too long trying to get these dickheads out of their tanks, so I need to give up and go back to the slog of trying to fight overpowered guards by myself. But at least I got my stick back, and an upgrade for the smart disc. Eventually, I finished it. I have no idea how long it took. I feel like I blacked out at some point, but I vaguely remember screaming obscenities at the screen and no doubt doing my girlfriend and my neighbour's collective heads in. This mission was absolute hell for me. It's the first time the game felt purposefully unfair. Like the devs didn't really understand how balanced difficulty works, so just gave the enemies more hit points, increased armour and damage output and called it a day. The enemies felt cheap, and sadly this is an issue that stays for the majority of the rest of the game. The next mission explains why I couldn't release those other predators from the lab. They're this mission's bosses, and they suck as well. So now I have to kill Swift Knife, like I know who that is, and I have to do it before he kills all the scientists in the area, so I can't switch off the weather station. So I fail that twice, and then this happens. Why is this so easy? Why isn't he fighting back? Why is the combat in this game so fucking broken? So now I'm running around looking for scientists so I can use their faces to shut down different parts of the weather station. Fucking weather station. When did the Predator become James Bond Jr.? This chapter really started to annoy me as it went on top of fighting the orange predator, who I assume is Swift Knife, and using scientists' faces to control the weather. I also have to kill waves of guards to shut down force fields to open the way forward and avoid these flying cars that like to shoot from a distance and repeat the line, "If it bleeds, we can kill it," ad fucking nauseum. Eventually, I get to the top of the area and fight the other two predators from the lab in a battle that is so laughably one-sided that I felt like an actual bully. The The predator that was sniping me, who I think is called Longspear, gets the shit slapped out of him and dies in literal seconds, and I shoot the big guy, who must be Stoneheart as he's the only one left, until he runs away and jumps into the fucking sea. Oh my god. Next mission now, and if you have Asians with katanas and kabuki masks on your racist bingo card, mark it down and oh shit, I won! So why do I feel so empty? I hated this mission with a passion. It's full of snipers with energy beam weapons and guards with machine guns to chip away my health from a distance. Then there are dudes firing homing rockets at you with the kind of precision that could blow a crab off your ball bag and leave your pubes unsinged. Then there are these flying cars shooting me from a safe distance that I'm pretty sure I can't take down. Narrow walkways to fall off while trying to avoid all this bullshit, and the occasional sword-wielding Asian gangster that are without a doubt the easiest things to take out in the entire level. And then there's a prototype Ulysses, which is way harder than the normal models, but apparently weak to an alien frisbee. This mission took so long for me to do. The whole thing feels like a gauntlet of bullshit. I died so many times to the cheapest shit that I decided there was only one thing to do. I pulled up a guide and went back through every single chapter I hadn't completed the bonus objective or collected the weapon upgrade in, and went hunting. I came back bigger and badder than ever with an awesome new costume, and I died in the dumbest fucking way possible. That was the last time though, because I finally did it. I got to the end of the chapter and one of the lamest boss fights in the game. I had to take on the 3 sword boys from earlier, all at the same time, and they go down so easy it's insulting. I wish I could say this was me being awesome at the game, but it's not. As I've said before, there's no skill to the combat, it's just button mashing. After the slaughter, Scarface jumps onto Lucretia's car and is off to see Mother, the computer that runs Neonopolis, and the final stretch of the game. The beginning of this next mission throws the kitchen sink at me in the most boring way. A room full of Ulysses attacking a couple at a time, all being taken out with one instant death move that has a 7 to 8 second unskippable animation to it playing each and every time I kill one of these things. The novelty of the execution wears off real quick in this room. Once they're all dead, the door opens and it's onward to a room with a bunch of prototype Ulysses. Now, I fucked this part up and accidentally made it very difficult for myself. The objective is to find the highlighted people running around the map, grab them and smush their face into a console to unlock the elevator. But, for some reason, I thought I had to kill all the prototype Ulysses, which was a real hard feat once I depleted all my energy weapons. Somehow I managed it with 12 hit points left and no items to heal myself. And it turns out that little ordeal was for a bonus mission, so it's not an entire waste. So I grab a dude, politely ask him to open the lift, and I'm so grateful for his help I take him to the next chapter with me. This next mission is super simple. I just break the power boxes to undo the illusion and open the way to Mother, kill another monster squad and collect some trophies. Next up, it's a rematch with the big predator Stoneheart from earlier, and it's literally just run backwards and hit it with projectiles. I'm this far into the game and it's still blowing my mind how bad the bosses are, and believe me when I say the worst is yet to come. After Stoneheart loses his head, my boy Scarface walks into Mother's chamber and a reveal that I kind of saw coming, but not quite how it's played out. There's another flashback to 1930 and the game finally reveals how Scarface lost his eye and equipment. And we also learn how Hunter Borgia, the big dude who captured Scarface earlier, could live to be 100 years old. That reason is predator blood, which I didn't realise was a thing until writing this, and it turns out it was an idea taken from an Alien vs Predator comic. And speaking of AVP, Scarface is suddenly attacked by xenomorphs. So the objective here is to shut down 4 cooling fans to expose the main reactor to destroy Mother. But, in order to complete the bonus mission, the reactors have to be shut down in the correct order, which means a lot of backtracking through identical corridors while fending off waves of infinitely respawning xenomorphs. I didn't like this mission at all. The Xenos are annoying as hell, constantly swarming Scarface and chipping his health down. This is especially annoying when climbing, which leaves Scarface unable to defend himself. so I either had to drop down, kill the swarm, and hope I could climb to the top before the next swarm arrives. Spoiler alert, I couldn't. Or just keep climbing and take the damage. And there is a lot of climbing in this mission. Eventually, I figured out I could keep backflipping between climbable areas to avoid the Xenos, and that made things a bit more manageable. There's a lot of aimless running about too, as the corridors are all identical and it is far too easy to get turned around. Would this have been easier if I'd shut down the fans in any order? Probably, but it wouldn't have taken away how annoying the Xenos are. They make weird scuttle noises like wet spiders, roar like lions, and scream like ghouls for some reason. It's the first game with Xenos I've experienced that doesn't actually sample the sound effects from the films. They're constantly swarming and respawning, and it makes the whole mission feel like an outdated Musou game. The novelty of fighting Xenos wears off quickly and becomes mind-numbingly dull. I don't know how they did it, but Eurocom managed to make fighting Xenomorphs boring. So that's an achievement, I guess? Eventually, I got the fan shut off and the core destroyed, and that's the end of the chapter. Now I have to return to Mother's chamber with the base objective of eliminating the nest, which just means killing 30 aliens, which can be done without leaving the first room. Killing an additional 20 completes the bonus objective and unlocks the City Hunter costume from Predator 2, then it's a quick run to Mother's chamber to put an end to her once and for all. This is another execution that happens during a cutscene that 100% should have been a player action. Mother has been narrating the entire story. She's the one who injured Scarface, caused his exile, and she's been the puppet master this whole time. And she goes out in a fucking cutscene. It's like if at the end of Snake Eater, that scene in the flower field where the player has to pull the trigger to make Snake kill you-know-who, was just a cutscene. It's anticlimactic and it takes something away from the player, which games should never do. And it's another mark on the tally chart of what makes this game so disappointing. Next chapter, suitably titled The New Flesh, in what I assume is a nod to David Cronenberg's Videodrome, sees Hunter Borgia emerge from a genetic augmentation chamber as a Yautja human hybrid, and Lucretia throws up, gets knocked to the floor, and dies. Interestingly, the next time the idea of a Yautja human hybrid would come up would be in a cut concept from Shane Black's 2018 movie The Predator. Scarface arrives and mocks Hunter with audio playback, and I fucking love this. Throughout the franchise, predators have used audio recordings to taunt their prey, and at the risk of being crucified by a fanbase, I think it's done better here than in the movies.
Want to kill me?
Scarface just straight up drops one-liners on people left, right and centre, and it gives us an insight into his personality, I think. He's a cocky son of a bitch with a savage sense of humour, and I think it's great. Back to the encounter with Hunter, who apparently burps, and Scarface is so scared he kills himself. Next try and a quick run to the top of the stage to smash a computer and unlock the worst costume in the game. And then it's back to the fight and, oh, I can't hurt him! It turns out that this phase of the fight is on a timer, and I have to wait until the trio who won me racist bingo turns up to help. But it doesn't matter because I die again. The third time's the charm though, and Hunter takes so few hits to beat, I am shocked. But of course, being a boss in the third act of this game, he doesn't die, he just runs away. And now here we are, the final chapter of the game, and one of the worst bosses I have ever fought. It starts off with a platform chase until we get to what will be the first arena. Eventually he takes out Rocco, Tum Tum and Colt, and then it's just this. This is it. This is the final boss in Predator Concrete Jungle. After around 3 minutes of this, he runs away again, so Scarface gives chase, and then it's back to this for about another minute. And that's it. One of the easiest and most boring boss fights I've ever experienced. And with that done, Scarface takes his trophy and goes home. And wait, that's it. That's the ending. After all this, the Predator gets in his car and fucks off, and we're left staring at a graffitied statue. Course not. We get an after credits stinger, where we get to see the formation of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, and Lucretia's fate as the new brain of Mother. Could this be hinting that Mother in Concrete Jungle is the origin of Weyland-Yutani built MUTHUR 6000 Mother computer system from the Alien franchise? Yeah, that's exactly what they're getting at. Not gonna lie, I like this stinger, and I think it's a shame it isn't canon anymore. At least I don't think it is. Ridley Scott fucked a lot of the Alien and Predator canon up when he made Prometheus, and then fucked it further with Alien Covenant, essentially destroying decades worth of novels, comics, games and movies. Also, we could see this?
I'll do the fingering.
Predator Concrete Jungle is one of the most disappointing games I've ever played. There is so much missed potential in it that it's difficult not to feel let down. The clunky controls, movement and lifeless combat being the main contributing factors to its status as a bad game. And then there's the music, which I can only describe as painfully generic, utterly forgetful, and just not very good. There's the cringy edgelordiness of it all, the racial stereotypes, the way women and sex workers are treated. I'm not against edgy and offensive humour, in fact, I love it, but it has to be clever and it has to make you think. And having a Mexican gang dressed up like luchadors and black guys doing voodoo isn't that. It's trite, it's lazy, and it's something I'd like to say we've moved past as a society, but looking at the state of the world, we've still got a long way to go. And yes, I know this came out in 2005, and 2005 was a different time, and 20-year-old me would have no doubt loved the edginess of it all, but 20-year-old me was a fucking idiot. Anyway, I think the way the chapters are done is bad, and a way to make the game on paper look a lot bigger than it actually is. Oh wow, 26 chapters? This game's huge! Yes, but half of those chapters are 2-minute long boss fights that could easily have been added to the end of the previous chapter had the game had an actual checkpoint system. But then that would mean developing a checkpoint system and reducing the number of chapters down to 13, which doesn't look as impressive. So what did I like? Well, I think I've made it abundantly clear that despite its more problematic elements, I'm a big fan of the story. I think Grant Morrison did a great job creating this world that feels like it's straight out of a comic book. I thought Scarface was a great character despite not actually saying anything, and I enjoyed the references and Easter eggs, even if some of them, like the AVP armor, the Xenomorphs and the Charles Weyland name drop, did feel like they were shoehorned in at the 11th hour to tie into the previous year's AVP movie. I thought it was full of great ideas that were unfortunately executed poorly due to time constraints or lack of experience on the development team side. I was going to knock the visuals, but after booting up Spider-Man 2 to capture that footage from earlier, this game doesn't actually look that bad. Yeah, it's not great, but for 2005, it is pretty good. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Predator Concrete Jungle. I realise I took a very long time to say, great idea, poor execution, but once I started typing the script it was really difficult to stop. This was like therapy for me. So, have you played it? If you have, what do you think? Let me know in the comments, like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and most importantly, thank you so much for watching to the end, and I will see you in the next video.